All of us have heard stories of terrifying things lurking in the jungle. But how often do those tales come from those who ventured into the green abyss? Well, today I bring you a story from a channel called Jungle Echoes. They go into the depths of the jungle to discover new animals. But one night the jungle itself screamed at them, and when they went to see what it was in the morning, it was beyond anything they could have imagined. So let's get started. For our first prompt, I want to hear about a time you did something extremely spontaneous. Tell me everything. Let's jump into our first video. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video comes from the channel Jungle Echoes. Now, Jungle Echoes is a discovery channel all about exploring the world's jungles and finding its secrets. The channel is all about documenting wildlife and seeing all the wonderful creatures that live in the jungle. But that is until one night when the jungle itself seems to try and kill them. They start off their story by telling us how it's normal to hear many sounds while living in the jungle. You get used to the howling monkeys, the chirping of cicadas, the occasional rustle in the underbrush. You get used to all of these sounds because you really can't do anything about them. So you might as well get used to it. But one night they heard something different, something that even made the jungle fall silent. Now they were staying in the tenebrous forest in South America, an area of jungle so thick that hardly any humans dare enter. They had been there for quite some time and nothing had happened. So they thought that maybe they would have a nice peaceful evening. But they were wrong. It was around 2:43 a.m. and they were woken up by a scream. It was long, guttural, and slowly rose in pitch. It was neither human nor animal. It was somewhere in between, and it echoed through the trees and then just died into silence. It was like the jungle itself held its breath. The worst part was that the jungle was usually noisy, full of life, but now it was eerily silent. Even the insects seemed to stop making noise. After hearing this awful noise, they packed their things and went to investigate. They were a team of 5, so there was no way they were staying there after hearing such a noise. They traveled roughly a mile from their camp and found a clearing. There was flattened vegetation and weird scorch marks in a spiral pattern. And in the center of it all was what looked like a pile of bones. But these weren't just animal bones. They were arranged almost deliberately, like someone had placed them there, but who? They also found a broken GoPro that was still recording on a loop. It belonged to nobody they knew. There was a team of 3 men setting up camp and then flashes of movement behind them. 2 pairs of eyes could be seen reflecting light. And then finally, the moment that they recognized, the scream. The camera dropped to the ground and the footage ended right then and there. They showed this footage to an elder from the nearest village and her reaction was very telling. She didn't seem scared or shocked. She just nodded her head slowly. When the scream played, she turned away and said one word, Kur-ah. She told them that it was a name passed down in stories. Legend said that the guardian of the jungle would only be awakened when something sacred was disturbed. Nobody knew what that sacred thing was or where it was, but when Cora screamed, it meant it was already too late. She told them that they had stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to find. She warned them to leave and never come back, to never speak of what they saw again. She basically put a curse on them if they ever spoke of what they saw. But this didn't explain the bones or the men that were in the video. Sadly, the team had to leave that day and never got answers. The elders refused to tell them anything more and told them to forget about it. They left that day and never went back. But I think that was probably for the best because who knows what lurks in the depths of that forest. But one thing's for sure, that cry will haunt my nightmares forever. Some people believe that this story is completely true, but others aren't so sure. If you watch their videos, you'll notice that they have titles and views and comment sections. But the video that this story is from has none. Many people think that they faked this story to gain subscribers. But if you look into it further, you'll see that their other videos have comments and everything, but this one doesn't. If you go onto their social media, you'll see that they've posted nothing since the video was posted. And if you go onto their website, which is a legit research website, you'll see that they don't have a single article posted. This leads me to believe that they indeed faked this story to get subscribers. Because why else would they leave their most popular video and their website and social media? But what do you think? Do you think they faked it? Or do you think something actually happened? Either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Our next story comes from the channel Lost in the Woods. In this video, a couple is walking in the woods when they realize that something is following them. At first, they try to ignore it, but it quickly becomes clear that they need to leave. Let's jump into it. Today, I'm going to share with you a scary encounter that my friend and I had while hiking in the Beartooth Wilderness in the early 2000s. We had planned a week-long backpacking trip in an area not frequented by many people. 3 days into our hike, we had only seen one other couple. On this particular day, we had hiked alongside a river for several miles and camped on its banks. The next morning, we packed up and started hiking upstream. As we walked along the river, we noticed many large boulders and crevices along the bank. The river here was very shallow and clear. We could see no movement in the water except for the movement caused by the current. Every so often we would hear a splash and turn to look but would see nothing. We stopped for lunch along the riverbank, and my friend began reading a book while I dozed off under a tree. About 20 minutes into my doze, I heard what sounded like a woman screaming in the forest. It was a blood-curdling scream, like nothing I have ever heard. My friend looked up from her book and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yes, and that wasn't a bear." Startled by the scream, we decided to break camp and move to a new site further downriver. We gathered our things and headed downstream. As we walked along the river, we continued to hear splashes in the water, but we couldn't see anything in the water. Still, we figured it was probably just a large fish or a beaver. As we rounded a bend in the river, we saw a large rock monolith in the middle of the river. It was too large to move and appeared to be hundreds of years old. We couldn't help but wonder if whoever named this place had seen or heard something that they wanted to forget. We decided to take a shortcut across the river on top of the boulder field to catch up to the river further down. As we picked our way across the rocks, we continued to hear splashes and growls. However, we couldn't see anything. Big footprints in the mud. My friend and I stopped to examine some large footprints pressed into the mud on the riverbank. The prints were unlike any animal tracks we had seen before. They looked distinctly human, but there was no body attached to them. We started to feel uneasy. We had planned to hike another 6 miles that day, but decided to make camp once again. We were getting freaked out. We awoke the next morning to the sound of drumming. My friend and I looked at each other and said, "Let's get out of here." We packed up our things and started hiking downstream. We could hear the drumming growing louder. We soon came to a clearing where we could see the source of the sound. There was a large rock monolith in the center of a clearing. Someone or something was beating the rock with a stick or a hammer. My friend and I stared at each other in disbelief. My friend turned pale and said, "I think we should go." We thanked God that we hadn't been stupid enough to investigate the drumming, and we broke camp and headed downstream. Over the next few hours, we saw no other signs of life, only the footprints. That evening, we reached our car and sped away from the wilderness. We never went back. To this day, I wonder what we had witnessed in the Beartooth Wilderness. Those footprints have haunted my dreams ever since. Did they encounter something demonic in that forest? Or could this be a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you want to hear more crazy stories, then check out the playlist in the description. That's all for today. Until next time.